And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedic Guest Line, our good friend from NJ.com, as well as the No Huddle podcast, the No Huddle Show podcast, our friend Mike Kaye from NJ.com. What's up, Mike?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. It's every single time, man. I think you and our friend Paul Hudrick have a different look every time you're on the show. This time you're going with the hat and the well-groomed facial hair, by the way, I might add.
Really? I feel like I've got some random stuff popping up now that I've been on here, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know. So what are you gonna do?
You look like $1 million, my friend. You look like $1 million. Last time we spoke, we talked a lot about this Eagles offense, and we talked a lot about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. I want to start go a little bit deeper than what we've talked about a lot over the last couple of months when it comes to this football team. And we've talked about Howie Roseman a little bit this week, and we've talked a little bit about Jonathan Gannon, but I want to get a little bit more of a deeper dive down that avenue. Jonathan Gannon and Howie Roseman have something in common. No matter how good their units might be performing, they don't get a lot of praise no matter what. When it comes to Jonathan Gannon, what type of season do you think the first-year defensive coordinator has had?
Middling. Everything about this team has been middling, but the thing is middling is good enough to beat this schedule and to lay a foundation. It's the whole thing of the transition period. Like being in a rebuilding franchise doesn't mean you tank or you lose. It just means you're setting the base for what can happen in future years. And I think this year they actually did it right. I think they drafted relatively well. They're going to have, I believe, 8 rookies play over 8 games, or they're going to have 8 rookies play over 14 games. That's pretty crazy. They have an undrafted free agent who's going to play over 550 snaps. Their first 2 picks look like they have the upside to be, at the very least, Pro Bowlers. Look, everything's relative, right? And I think, look, I don't think Gannon really has the talent to play the type of defense that he wants to. I think outside of TJ Edwards, they're very underwhelming at linebacker. Their safety play has been very up and down, even though Rodney McLeod's had 2 huge plays in back-to-back games. I think this is the best cornerback play they've had since the early 2010s. But I do think that they need help, and I think they need some youth at defensive end. They need some better faces at linebacker. And by better faces, I mean better talent, not necessarily that Alex Singleton has a bad face, because I'm sure I'd hear about that. But no, I think they've set a foundation, right? They beat up bad quarterbacks. That's what good teams do, or what middling teams do. Now it's about proving you can beat good quarterbacks. And they're going to get to go to the playoffs. And, I think the thought process is that they're going to get stomped, and that's fine. But a lot of critics also thought this was going to be the worst roster in the league and the worst team in the league at the beginning of the season. And I just think, I hate to say I told you so, but I had them winning 9 games. I had it since May. And my logic was not even that exhilarating or hot takey. If you're good in the trenches and you can stay healthy in the trenches, the rookie class performs at the level it's supposed to, which I'd give it a B overall. And they take advantage of their weak road schedule. They're 5-3 on the road, they were 6-3 on the road. And then, they take advantage of their NFC East matchups towards the end of the year. They're 3-2 right now. They're probably going to finish 3-3 if they sit all their players on Saturday. I mean, that's 9 wins. So I think, they've done what a middling team should do. They should beat up on inferior teams and beaten up teams, and none of this should surprise anyone.
My way of explaining it was they're not a bad football team, but a good football team beats a bad football team, but a good football team does not beat a great football team, and that's what the Eagles are far from. They could be in that good range, and they could beat up on the bad teams, but when it comes to trying to be great, that's where I think they're a far cry from. I want to go back to something you said about Jonathan Gannon's defense. He's not doing what he wants to do. Is this more of the perfect example, though, of a coach coaching to what he has as opposed to what his alleged scheme might be with a little bit more talent?
Well, he'd tell you he doesn't have a scheme.
Right.
But, yeah, I think so. I think they're trying to see what works. And that's why they're so vanilla. Like, they don't have the safeties to make up for being more aggressive at corner. They don't have the linebackers to be more aggressive in blitzing. Like, that's simple football. I mean, look, if you look at Howie Roseman is going to get praise probably later in the show for me. But if you look at the defense, he's had only 2 homegrown players that have become starters, like legitimate starters, in Josh Sweat and TJ Edwards in recent years, right? Like Derek Barnett's fine, whatever. Right. He was a first-round pick, but obviously he's played below his level of talent. They had to sign Darius Slay. They had to sign Steve Nelson. I guess you could say Avonte Maddox as well. Avonte Maddox having a good year at nickel, but like both their safeties were free agent signings. I mean, Rodney McLeod's obviously been around for a while. Javon Hargrave was a free agent signing. Fletcher Cox was drafted at the beginning of the last decade. Like, there is a talent issue on defense, especially from a youth standpoint. And so I think what you're going to see with these future, they have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds this summer or this offseason. Those are going to be that's going to be the focus, because realistically, they've raised the offensive prowess from an internal standpoint with Dickerson and Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins and Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll even, and Jordan Mailata. Lane Johnson's going to be around for a bit. I am not convinced Jason Kelce is going to retire. That's just an opinion. He's playing out of his mind. Jalen Hurts is young. So I think in free agency, you handle the offense, you upgrade the wide receiver position with a veteran, and then you really look at defense in the draft. Now, you don't have to force picks. Like, if Linderbaum is available and you feel like Jason Kelce is going to retire in a year, then you obviously go after that guy. But I'm just saying, I think their strategy will be to go after defense in this draft, which is the right move because they've invested in so much youth on offense.
I know we got a whole offseason to talk about it, but do you actually see them taking 3 first-round picks, 3 players in the first round? Yeah,
I did a mock draft yesterday where I had them taking 3 defenders, but I did that because then you get all convoluted with the trade back stuff. Ideally, what I think you want to do is take that second first-round pick, try to trade back into the first half of the second round and try to get a 2023 first-round pick if you can, because if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out, you've got another roll of the dice in 2023. If you have 2 first-round picks, maybe you can package those. And if he does well, then you continue to build around him.
I do want to switch it to Howie Roseman for a second here, because you mentioned the rookie class. Talk about Devontae Smith. You talk about Landon Dickerson. Milton Williams even showed a couple of flashes. A very late-round pick. They took a flyer on there at defensive tackle. How would you evaluate Howie Roseman to this point this season with this team making it back to the playoffs?
Well, if the past 2 years have been a C and a D minus, this year's probably a B plus or a B. Look, I like his rookie class. And here's the thing, too, that I think needs to be kind of taken into account. He was killed for the Jalen Hurts pick. He was killed for the trade for Darius Slay and the extension. He was killed for the Javon Hargrave signing. Now, those are the 2 best players on defense and his starting quarterback that just led the team to a playoff run. So I think while it didn't work out last year, I think what he's done, even when things have been bad, have started to work out for him. But we also know he's a guy who can build up programs. He's not a guy who can sustain. And so I think he has set himself up to sustain by getting these 3 first-round picks. If you remember, 2018 and 2019, he had like a combined 10 picks. The last couple of years, he's had 8 and 9. So, or 9 and 8. No, 10 and 9. Excuse me. Sorry, the numbers are all over the place.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, I think the criticism of Howie is either always overzealous or, heavy. Or the criticism of him is always overzealous, and the praise of him is always overzealous. Realistically, he is, if you look at it statistically, right, just based on facts, okay, the past 5 years are a run that has only been kind of mimicked by like 3 other organizations over the past 20 years. Like he's made. I came here post Super Bowl. I've covered 3 playoff runs already. Like, that's wild, right? So they've won 2 division titles, a Super Bowl, been to the playoffs 4 times in the last 5 years. And he is the main constant in that success. He's also been a constant in the most successful period in the organization's history. I mean, like, I think, look, if you want to talk about his character with stuff that's been reported, totally understand that criticism. If you want to criticize his draft record, absolutely. He has had some horrific decisions. The Rager over Jefferson pick is going to go down as one of the worst decisions in franchise history. Mm-hmm. I'm less concerned about the JJ over DK thing. Once you get into the second round, that kind of becomes muddled. The Andre Dillard thing, I think the thought process was smart. They just picked the wrong guy. Mm-hmm. And it ended up working out with Jordan Mailata. So, and a lot of people are going to say, well, they just, they took a flyer on Jordan Mailata. Well, somebody had to do it, and he's the only one that did it. So for that to work out, and then for them to double down over the past 2 years, look, his second year here, last year, he was getting beat like a drum by Joe Osman. He was the worst player in camp, and they decided to stick with him anyway, and he worked out to be a top-tier left tackle over the past 2 years.
Wow.
So I think his patience in some regard, well, people say that he plays favorites, that worked out with Jordan Mailata.
Mm-hmm. No, it certainly did, yeah.
I think with Jalen Hurts, like, would you trade a second-round pick to guarantee that you were in the playoffs?
Yes.
That's the question that you should ask yourself, right?
Right. Absolutely. No, I mean, look, I was one of the people shouting from the rooftops what a stupid pick at the time was. You take a quarterback in the second round when you just inked Carson Wentz to the huge deal. That doesn't exactly always work out for teams. That's usually a very bad move. I don't know if he knew there was writing on the wall that stuff was really going to hit the fan. I almost cursed there. That stuff was really going to hit the fan there with Carson Wentz. But whatever it was, it ended up working out for Howie, being that you just stated the resume of Jalen Hurts, what he's doing in his first year as a starting quarterback, albeit for being killed as a second-round pick.
Well, and I've had people call me out on social media. I've been on radio shows where people think I've laid it on thick with Howie. Like, if you want to talk about facts, like, legitimately, and you don't want to I think a lot of the criticism for Roseman comes in like a vacuum, right? Like, it's like, this is how he's upset the fan base, or this is how he's made something wrong, as opposed to comparing him to other GMs. And sometimes a lot of people compare GMs without understanding how many misses they've had. Mm-hmm. Like, you could poke holes in most GMs.
Sure.
Like, I don't think Howie's an elite GM at all. I don't think he's a great GM. I think he's a good GM. I think he's in that 8 to 12 range in the league. And I think they're always competitive. Even last year when they were falling apart, they stayed competitive within the division for the most part until the end, until Nate Sudfeld played. No, I'm just but, like, I think, for all his faults, they are constantly competing. He had a lot of say in hiring Nick Sirianni, by the way. Mm-hmm. And that turned out to be the right move. I think he gets too much praise sometimes and he gets too much credit, but, like, realistically, the grass isn't greener on the other side unless you're finding, Brian Gutekunst, who's in Green Bay. He's got a generational quarterback who he pisses off all the time. Excuse me, you can bleep that out if you want.
No, it's fine.
People talk about Chris Ballard, who traded for the quarterback that the terrible GM allegedly mismanaged, and has not beaten the Jaguars on the road in his entire tenure, nor has he won a division title in a division where at least one team almost always has 4 or less wins. I think you look at Les Snead, who has been boasted about as this aggressive guy. Well, the roster he put together and traded away draft picks for scored 3 points against virtually the same team that Howie Roseman's roster scored 41 points on the year before. I think you look at Steve Keim and Jason Licht, 2 guys that failed to make the playoffs and failed with their premium quarterback picks until they lucked into other guys because they were given extra rope. Like, I just think every GM has bad picks. Every GM has bad decisions. What's their record, right? Like that, right. Who's going to the playoffs every year? You know what I mean? I think, like, that's, if you want to argue facts, that's fine. But I think when you hurl insults and you call, people names and do whatever, I just think that's like a waste of time. Like, I see, like, a lot of people really attack Howie's character. And look, based off the reporting, it's not great. It isn't. And believe me, other teams recognize it. I've talked to agents who say he's not very trustworthy, but he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And that's better than a lot of GMs who don't know what they're doing or are untrustworthy. So, I mean, who are both, you know? So I think, look, he's had a good year this year. None of it matters unless they nail next year. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Mm-hmm. Like Howie has to put together a string of good off seasons, which is something he hasn't really done. And I think that's kind of where the fan base should look. I think a lot like Jalen Hurts, Howie has bought himself another year of evaluation by performing well this year.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, I want to go to that for a second because you kind of hinted to it earlier in one of your other answers about Jalen Hurts, saying if he doesn't work out next year. So you do see him as the starting quarterback for this team next year?
Barring some like dream scenario where Russell Wilson's like, man, we just watched Mayor of Easttown. I got to jump to Philly. You know what I mean? Like, just adore those accents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like Sierra's just like, man, I got to get some gyms. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be, because I think to me, he's the one that got away. I think he's a guy that they probably think about and say, wow, could you imagine if we would have gotten this guy for 12 years or whatever? Oh, and by the way, the other guy that they drafted instead of him won a Super Bowl too. They have as many rings. So
how many picks was Foles and Russell? Was there like 3 picks, 4 picks, something like that in the third round?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Something like it was something. It was close. Just remember it was close. But anyway,
yes, it was close.
Yeah.
But look, I think he's earned it. Like on the surface, he has earned it. That locker room adores him. He's really won over Nick Sirianni, who you can tell genuinely cares about the guy. They've bonded over being coaches' sons. Brian Johnson has a long-term relationship with Jalen Hurts. I think, look, he's got to improve his vision. He's got to improve his accuracy. But I think he has over the last couple of games. You're noticing in the 2 games, particularly against Washington, he looked like a genuine franchise quarterback. He was making great reads, great throws, but he's not doing it consistently enough. And I think that that's the problem. Now, these slow starts on offense, I don't put completely on him. I think it's just been a perfect storm of terribleness. They got to figure that out, because if they go up against the Rams and they have one of those slow starts, they're going to lose almost within the first quarter, and it's going to be. But like, I think for this team, it's a positive they got to the playoffs. Like they really had no business making the playoffs. I had them at 9 wins, not making the playoffs. But I think, look, I think it says a lot about Nick Sirianni and his will. And look, he was getting trashed by literally everybody. The flower plant talk, like. But what I liked about him in researching him, when I was breaking news on him potentially getting hired in his interviews and everything, he's such a good teacher, and he relates to players in a way that no one else we've seen. Like even Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson's a former coach and a former quarterback. But Sirianni's like generationally closer to these kids, like, and these players. And I think Zach Berman, our friend's, going to give me crap for calling them kids. He hates when I do that. But like, these guys are legitimately, like, they're born in like 98 and 99. Like Sirianni was a teenager then, at least. You know, Doug was ending his career around that point. So I think there's that. I think this coaching staff is very young and has been, for the most part, effective in their teaching. And I think, look, Jalen Hurts is a guy who has galvanized this locker room. People care about him. People respect him. And look, I think his intangibles are off the charts. He's extremely smart. He's very comfortable in his own skin. He's a proactive leader. I mean, you saw with the letter to Washington in the league. I mean, he is a guy who cares about other people, and it shows. And I think that's won him the locker room.
Yeah, I'll say this. He's got a fan in me. He definitely does. Do the starters play Sunday? Or excuse me, Saturday night. I keep on doing that. All week I've been saying Sunday. Will the starters play for the Eagles? Will the starters play for the Cowboys Saturday night?
I think you'll see some starters for the Eagles, but I would be shocked if they play more than a series. I think the Cowboys will try to get up early and then maybe rest guys. But really, if you look at what the Eagles are doing, I actually asked Nick Sirianni on Thursday, I said, I got a two-part question for you. Are you going to rest your starters on Saturday? And, with 12 guys on the COVID list and some injuries to notable players, and you're not really able to really change a lot of seating, are you going to – why would it make sense to play players? And he gave me this long, convoluted answer. And
I heard that. I caught that.
Look, Jason Kelce's got a starting streak that I think if he gets off the COVID list, they would love to keep going. But Jalen Hurts has an ankle injury that I think is worth healing. If you remember, the Eagles traded a conditional 6th-round pick for Gardner Minshew before week 1, and the condition was that if he played 50% of the offensive snaps in 3 games, then it would turn to a 5th-round pick. Well, there's 1 game remaining. He's only played over 50% of the snaps once, so that can't happen. So they traded a 6th-round pick for him. So there's no draft,
implication. Yeah.
So look, I mean. And I would also say, look, this is a lucrative opportunity for the Eagles. One, it gives their young players a lot of experience. You're going to see guys like Cameron Malveaux and Jacoby Stevens get some time. It's also going to rest some guys. This team's being asked to play 4 games in 19 days. That's ridiculous. So you get some guys some notable experience. Plus, if Minshew's out there and he looks good, Minshew can buy himself a potential starting job next year and potentially a notable pick for the Eagles when they got him for, a travel thermos.
Yeah, but by the way, I meant to thank you at the top of the show for doing that math for me. I heard you ask that question earlier in the week, and I'm like, oh, good. Mike already did the math. I appreciate that. Last one for you, my friend. We talked earlier in the show about you changing your look. The top portion of your, what is this, the cover photo on your Twitter profile? Yes. People can check you out right there. Is that an alligator head? What do you got on there? And I assume, is this you in Jacksonville?
No, this is in Detroit. It was Halloween, and I was missing my kid's Halloween, and I was furious about it. And my mom flew up from Florida to go trick-or-treating with my wife and my son. And she brought this mask for some reason. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wear this in the press box because, it's times like these you treasure. I mean, we're going to Detroit of all places. And so I put that on and a bunch of people took pictures. And I'm not a whoa, look at me type of guy. I mean, no. I'm an outgoing guy, but whatever. But I was doing a TV spot with CBS, our good friend Pat Gallen. And,
okay.
I decided at the end of my segment I would put on the mask. So I kept it on. It was hot. And so I had it on. And coincidentally, that's when the Eagles turned things around. I also thought it was pretty funny. I won a Halloween contest at NJ.com. Unbeknown to me. Look, you got to celebrate the holidays, right?
Right,
and,
right.
I was super bummed. You can ask my partner, Chris Franklin. I was super bummed to miss my kid's first cognitive Halloween, he's about to turn 3 next week, but he's really into Halloween. I hear about this trick or treating, and I'm just like, man, I'm missing this. So I did that. I FaceTimed him with the mask on, and it was funny. So I kept it, but I'm sure I'll change the banner eventually, but not to Joe Banner, but I will change the banner eventually. You and I always like to have some fun with my social media or my facial hair. Or something.
Oh, of course.
Maybe next time I'll wear a shark head on the show, just the entire time. It'll be a running gag. I'll just wear a mask every single time.
Is your kid into the Baby Shark? He like the Baby Shark?
Yeah, he likes Baby Shark. Do. You know what's weird? The first time I ever heard that song, and a lot of people made fun of me, it was Carson Wentz's charity event, his last softball tournament that he had. Nate Sudfeld, that was his entrance music. And Berman turns to me because Berman knows everything. He's like, "You've never heard of Baby Shark?" I'm like, but I won't tell you what I actually said, but
no. I get it. I can put it together. Don't worry.
I made a tall joke, but anyway,
Zach's the best. He would be laughing along with us.
Zach is one of my favorite people. He gives me such a hard time. We have this Abbott and Costello connection. I would love to. like him and I like just on a road trip. Because like everybody likes to hate on me and say I'm like annoying and all this other stuff, which is
I find you charming. No, I find you charming.
Well, but you know me, I like to talk a lot, and I don't always like have a direction of where I'm going. So like
you too?
Well, we have like a big, like a little big brother, big little brother sort of thing. And I've always respected Zach. I think he's a terrific journalist and a good friend. Don't tell him I said that. I'm sure he doesn't watch the show. So
he's been on. I will play this little segment just for him.
Did you have to wake up at like 4 a.m. because that's the only time he ever does anything?
No, Zach is definitely one of the people that I have to like really be on top of my game and like hit him up the day before. And like that's the kind of that's how I have to roll with Zach.
Yeah, you just text me like 6 minutes before the show's on. You're like, "Hey, my wife just got off the phone. Do you want to be on the show?" Sorry, 10 other people like passed. I was gonna get Boston Scott and Cameron Malvo and
Joe Osman. You mentioned him earlier.
Joe Osman, the shark from Jaws.
Oh yeah,
and you were fifth. So it's like I get. I mean, that's a at least I'm not sixth like the Michelin Man or whoever your sixth choice was. But yeah, I mean, look. This has been a weird week because, like, the interest in the game obviously isn't there. We don't know who the opponent will be for the playoffs. But what I will say is this. I think, Philadelphia is reactionary. And it's kind of what makes this the best sports city in the world is everybody has an opinion and everybody thinks they're right. And everybody has, like, some sort of knowledge or perspective or whatever. But I think – coming from Jacksonville and also obviously knowing this team, the perspective of knowing a team that's tripping over itself constantly and a good organization. Look, I was heavily critical on Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. I said that Lurie is a long-term problem that can't be solved because he's the owner. And look, I think he knocked this hire out of the park. I think if you look at this, every single hire that he has made at head coach has gone to the playoffs in one of their first 2 years. Like, that's bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the whole meddling and everything else, that's a whole other storyline. But, like, again, I think we need to do a better job as a society of criticizing when somebody does something wrong, but also praising when somebody does something right. And I think that's been the biggest issue with Howie Roseman's tenure. And frankly, he's given a lot of examples of both. So it's like, it just depends on what you harp on.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles are in the playoffs for the 4th time in 5 years. I'm going probably to Tampa or LA and in the middle of winter, which is not a bad, get. And maybe I'll listen to a book on tape or, finish my Dave Grohl book or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Very nice. This is the absolute last one. So when we get an Antonio Brown here in Philadelphia, when's that happening?
Oh, man.
Is that the train wreck of train wrecks?
Like, I mean, look.
Unbelievable.
There's two sides to every story.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that one's correct. And I just, like, that's, like, the last thing this team needs.
I couldn't agree more. That's all I'm looking for. I couldn't agree more.
They've been pretty much drama-free. I mean, like, even the drama that they have had, it's worked out. You know what I mean? Yeah. So go with what you got. It's when you're in the fantasy playoffs, you got to go with what got you there. And I think that's, they're hoping they draw Tampa is my guess.
Okay.
Because that team is banged up and now they're dealing with some serious drama. So, and they've also played them before, so they know what to expect. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. I think the Rams will just like light up the sky on them. Even though I think Les Snead's approach to building rosters is never going to fully pay off, but we'll see.
I just think if they do play the Rams, they're literally just going to have everyone at the goal line the entire game, just all 11 people. That's the way they'll play.
I actually think Slay's a good match. Odell Beckham Jr. is a better matchup for Slay than Mike Evans. It's just everybody else that's really tough.
Sure. Mike Kaye, ladies and gentlemen, NJ.com. Here he is once again in his award-winning mask. It's fantastic. NJ.com, also co-host of the No Huddle Show as well. And Tombstone Advocate. That's a conversation for another day. Mike Kaye, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.